Is there any question from the floor? Okay, I see two people on my left hand.
Okay, thank you. My name is Heri Murbalalana. I am instructor from PPA and I am lecturer from Trisakti University. My question, why do facility trade finance only for small enterprise with good performance, with experience more 2 years, and then the export retention with regular buyer? That is, it's not risk. Okay? As we know, maybe exporting for small enterprise need for the first time you go to international market. Thank you.
Sorry Pak, yang pertamanya bisa diulang sedikit, saya tadi miss pertanyaan.
Okay, the facility trade finance only for the small enterprise with good performance, with experience more than 2 years, and the export transaction with a regular buyer. So I think it's not many risks because it is, I think it's okay. Not problem. Okay. The small business need for the first time he go to international market, he need to support the financial department like ICA or another. Thank you.
Okay, so the question is on the profile of the SMEs that are looking for financing. You are questioning why usually financing is available only for those who have track records of at least 2 years.
Correct.
And those actually who are in need of financing are actually the ones who are just starting up.
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. Any of the panelists would like to answer? Maybe Pak Suharsono can answer the question.
Okay. I'm not clear enough about the question. Is financing for SME?
Yeah, he was asking why trade financing that is given to SMEs, the banks usually pick the SMEs with good performance track record and at least 2 years in business.
Oh yeah. Well, according to our experience, financing SME actually is quite safe, but well, the track record we needed, and most of the SME financial report usually is not. It's internal report only. And there is a special condition supposed for credit, financing, and trade financing. We have a special condition for that.
But is it true that banks would prefer SMEs who are already in business for 2 years?
Well, we could do a structured finance, a special structured finance, like Felix say. Maybe we can use. What you call it, credit guarantee fund, as a substitution collateral to make the convenience for the bank to finance the SMEs.
So it means creative structuring. Pak Felix.
I just want to add something here, just to share the African experience, at least on this case. For what we call very small businesses, very small SMEs, banks in Africa, banks like EcoBank, for example, have created a special product and treating them as a product program. SME who have the same profile, the same need, we define a special program, product program, and we can finance their working capital or whatever need they have. An institution like us are guaranteeing EcoBank for this type of risk. Because yes, it's a dedicated product, but the risk behind is still high. Our role is to come to cover these risks for them to go where they need to go, because this is the risk to take. We cannot say the biggest size of SME are this one. We can't avoid them. So we just come to reduce the risk for them to apply this new product. In addition to that, There are some, yes, analyzing the SME risk, especially small, is very difficult. We provide a kind of capacity building to the African banks, especially EcoBank, for them to improve their know-how on how to assess this kind of risks to avoid letting them down.
Okay. Thank you, Pa Felix. Mr. Andre would like to add something?
Yes. You see, as Mr. Felix Bigpo was mentioning, banks today have changed their approach. Mainly British bank and South African bank, ITFC and some other, where they look at the transaction. They don't look at you as a balance sheet. So you may have 2 years, 3 years, 1 year experience. I take a case here. I have one of our good clients, which is in this room. He started with $5 million. Today he has $350 million line after 5 years. But he started with 0. In order to do that, structured commodity finance come in line. Any new company who want to go into business have to have a management team who understand the different actors which are supposing to be managed within the supply chain. So in order to do that, you have to understand the various players, the transporter, the clearing forwarder, the warehouse capacity, etc., etc. Banks know the client. It doesn't look at who is behind these various actors or who is behind the borrower. This is why organizations like mine come in. But when we come in, we go from BL to warehouse receipt. That's why we work with organizations like Sharaf Group, for example, which is based in Dubai and acting in about 28 countries. So the point I try to make here is that there is possibility to be financed, even if you are a newcomer, as long as you know your market, you know who you sell to, and you know where you can supply the goods. Then the bank will finance you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Laxmi, you would like to add?
No, I think what was mentioned right now by the last speaker was very relevant, that you really have to look at the totality of the transaction. You know, the way the exporter has positioned himself in terms of that whole network. And there are lots of ways in which you can gauge the credibility of that. And I'd also like to say that to a large extent, you don't start in a vacuum. There's always a relationship that the bank would have had with the party, you know, in areas probably outside of trade, working capital finance, for instance, which is how you really build the confidence levels and then you support.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, what work the guarantee fund does or what we do, what are these guarantees for? These are to embolden the banks to go ahead and take steps to support them.
Right. And okay, I would like to give the opportunity to the gentleman at the back first.
Yes. Thank you. Let me speak to French to explain clearly my idea. Je voudrais dire que je suis vraiment désolé, mais je m'appelle d'abord Alioune Sarr, je représente l'agence sénégalaise chargée des exportations. Mais le vrai problème des petites et moyennes entreprises en Afrique, c'est qu'il n'y a pas d'accompagnement réel des banques, en réalité. Les banques commerciales ont des exigences que les petites et moyennes entreprises ne peuvent pas respecter. Et je suis vraiment désolé, mais nous ne sentons pas, quand nous avons une petite entreprise qui veut exporter de la tomate, de l'arachide ou une mangue hors du Sénégal, il n'y a pas un soutien bancaire disponible. Donc nous pensons qu'il faut réfléchir sur cette question fondamentale de l'appui aux petites et moyennes entreprises qui constituent 80% du tissu industriel. Il est vrai, des banques comme EcoBank font des efforts, mais c'est insuffisant. La deuxième question que je voulais dire aux responsables de la Banque islamique, c'est le commerce des pays membres de l'OCI, l'Organisation des pays membres de l'OCI. Qu'est-ce que la Banque islamique fait pour la promotion commerciale entre ces pays? Nous savons que bientôt il y aura le sommet sur la viande halal dans les Émirats arabes unis, mais il n'y a aujourd'hui aucun service qui permet à ces pays-là de faire un commerce inter-OCI. Nous pensons que sur cette question-là également, il y a un travail important qui doit être fait en matière de services d'accompagnement. Pour terminer, je voudrais dire que le paradoxe que nous avons en Afrique, c'est que nous avons des banques surliquides qui ont beaucoup de cash et les PME qui n'ont pas accès au financement. Des banques surliquides et des PME qui n'ont pas accès au financement. Et nous, quand nous faisons un travail d'accompagnement de ces entreprises sur les marchés extérieurs, en matière de promotion, en matière de foire, si ce n'est pas des fonds publics disponibles, il n'y a aucune banque aujourd'hui qui donne des lignes de financement pour accompagner, par exemple, une PME à faire une foire à Milan, en Indonésie, en Arabie Saoudite. Nous pensons que sur les services précis d'accompagnement de ces entreprises sur les marchés internationaux, tant qu'il n'y aura pas de services adaptés, il y aura extrêmement de difficultés pour que les petites et moyennes entreprises en Afrique puissent faire un business équitable et un business prospère. Thank you.
Okay.
To summarize this question in English, perhaps for clarity, because some of the translation was not there. The gentleman is from Senegal. He is representing Export Development Senegal. He was saying that right now there is a wide gap. The commercial banks are not really helping SMEs obtain financial instruments for export. The question for the Islamic Development Bank was along the same lines, as well as how the Islamic Development Bank can do more to go down market towards smaller SMEs.
Okay, thank you. I missed probably most of the questions, so I would like to give the opportunity to Pak Andre to answer first. Well, as concluded by
Okay.
Tariq,
Yes, I
it's
can.
the wide gap.
I can answer. You know, we have a big problem in Africa or in the developing world. We know how to produce, we know how to buy, but we don't know how to sell. Before to go into entrepreneurship or whatever business, you have to know your market, and you have to know where do you sell and who you sell to. Then from there you buy. But you don't buy and say, where do I sell? Because you have an intuition. This is one. Point number two, there's a lot of banks in Senegal who have changed their approach. I'm not talking only EcoBank, which are in, I don't know how many African countries, 33 or 35. But there is some bank, for example, in Senegal, like the BRM bank, who are financing young enterprise from scratch. But you have to come with a solid contract. If you have a solid contract, you know at what price you are selling it, you are confirmed, and you know at what price you are going to buy, then the bank will finance you your transaction. There is no problem. But you have to know your market and you have to know the off-taker. The bank will not sell for you. The bank cannot, you have to understand that the bank is receiving money from the depositor, which you are part of. He cannot take your money and take a risk on it. He takes a risk at one condition, that he can mitigate it. But to mitigate it, he has to understand what are the various underlying. This is a new philosophy. This philosophy will help the bank to finance young structure like yours or any structure who are in export business or import business. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anybody would love to add on the question? If not, I will.
In my opinion, that commercial banks are only giving on security-based and balance sheet-based financing only. It is only in between the bank transaction financing is occurring. By and large, SMBs are getting only financed by securities and balance sheet base. That's my opinion. But in between banks, they're getting transactional-based finance.
Yeah, we see the banks are coming increasingly under fire. But we must say that banks in emerging markets are making considerable efforts to finance SMEs, be it in the trade finance space or in other space. As my colleagues on the panel have explained, banks are moving away from balance sheet financing to more transactional approach financing. I would just like to give our experience in EcoBank, as we've put together various product programs which are a basket of similar SMEs to whom we provide different kinds of financing. So for example, if you are exporting cashew nuts from Senegal or groundnut from Senegal, during the cashew nut season, we'll put together an envelope to say, if you have a buyer, if you have the cashew nut, if you have a warehouse, if you have X, Y, Z, you can meet these criteria, we will be able to provide you pre-export financing up to the warehouse for somebody to take us out. So there are many various schemes ongoing that we can spend the rest of today discussing. So it is true that there's room for improvement in providing financing, but it is not that nothing is being done. Something is being done. In Senegal, we are the largest exporter of groundnuts. We are the largest exporter of groundnuts with a company called Suno Advance. You might say that's not an SME, yes, but we also have a scheme for financing the growers into Suno. Thank you.
Thank you.
Say something just to conclude. Can I say something on?
Okay.
You're right. As René said, a lot of effort has been done by the bank to finance the SME, especially to finance the trade. I think the bank in Africa knows how to finance trade, transaction basis, product program basis, and whatever it is. The issue comes when it is to finance investment of the SME. And the reason is simple. Banks don't have the liquidity for that. This liquidity that you're talking about are short-term liquidity. We can't use it to finance your long-term need. So we are putting in place some mechanism to help them transforming this short-term liquidity into long-term liquidity. And the SME themselves have to do some homework. Most of the time when, I have to say that when a transaction is good, I don't know any bank will refuse to finance a good transaction because it's not at their interest to keep the money on their vault.
Okay.
When the transaction is not good, or when the risk involved is so high, this is where we come in to try to mitigate this risk. And the SME has to be ready in terms of capital also.
Okay.